Well, anyway, this is fun. We're back in our virtual studio.
Yes.
'Tis the season, which means we're, heading off.
Well,
in
it's
all
just the
directions.
season of colds, I
That's
think.
right.
Also,
Also-
so we're keeping our distance.
The other thing is, like, Andrew, I love you, man, but like, we're gonna need more than 6 feet for this one.
Right.
But no, it's fun to get back in our virtual studio. We haven't used it. I was thinking about we have not used our virtual studio in quite some time.
We have not. No.
We've had a whole stream, and we've been fortunate enough with a lot of our guests lately too to be in studio. But today it makes a lot of sense. We've been traveling. It is that time for travel and for colds and for everything else. So why not?
Yeah, I know. Sit back and enjoy it. Yes.
But it's always fun when we turn this back on, like sort of kick the tires again. I'm like, what's changed? Because it's not we get nothing from them, but we use Riverside as for our virtual studio, and they're always making changes. So for me, it's always fun where I'm like, let me.
It's a bit of an adventure to see whether this is going to work and what's going to be weird. Yes.
Let me click that button that used to be there for 6 months, and I'm like, oh wait, it's no longer there.
Right.
But no, this will be fun. Yeah, well, it's funny too because before we hit record, we were just talking about travel and stuff, and just kind of all the complexity. Oh my goodness, just all the joys of travel.
I know, and of course the backstory here is sort of I'm just getting over a cold, Thanksgiving cold. Thank you, got to be thankful for something. But I head out to Berlin to give a keynote tomorrow, so I've been desperately trying to work out how I shake this off, and so I get to the point where not only am I not infectious, but actually I can travel without it being the most miserable experience ever, and it's actually working. And the weird thing is, I as we were just saying, for the first time ever, I turned to ChatGPT and said, I'm traveling in 5 days. I've got this really awful cold. What do I do? Anything, just tell me anything so I can get onto that plane on Tuesday morning. And it worked. That's
wild. Out of curiosity, and you don't need to disclose any more than that. Was this the first time you've ever gone to AI as a doctor? Well, I mean, for something as minimal as a cold.
I've done this quite a bit actually, but in terms of actually getting clear advice, I've asked it for sort of assessments of sort of blood work and stuff like that, and sort of dove into different things. And this is the first time where I've used it as a doctor substitute.
Yeah.
And of course, there's only so much that can go wrong with a cold, so it's pretty low risk territory.
That's right.
But it was pretty good.
You're not so far hopped up on cold medicine where it's like you read.
Actually, that's probably the reason why I think it's so good. That Sudafed is working really well.
See, the machine's got it sorted, mate. They're just like, you know what? This human let's just incapacitate him. Just have him high as a kite. He won't.
So I'm just going to be sitting here grinning for this session.
That cold, you won't even feel after you take what I prescribe, you won't even feel that cold anymore.
So, well, actually, I found that. So this is getting totally off topic, but last time I had a bad cold was when I was in China back in June.
Oh, yeah.
And I needed to get something to travel back. So after talking to all these people, they eventually sort of got something from a Chinese pharmacy. I have no idea what it was, but boy, it was good. I had a great journey back the next day.
Well, that's I remember being in Shanghai, going in some of these and it's like I can't remember if it was a pharmacy and also one of these places that just had powders and elixirs of all sorts of stuff where you're like, seahorse powder, what does that do? And all these kind of things. So who knows what you had, man?
I know.
Hey, it worked. It worked. You flew home one way or another, right?
Yes.
Oh goodness. Well, I think, so today will be a little fun. I thought also, I always plan these things too, where I'm like, okay, I've got a topic for us. And it's like, at first it was like, oh, this will be kind of fun and light. And then the more I was digging into it, I'm like, we'll see where this goes.
Yes.
We can get pretty cranky, as well, because I think from one thing, I'll tee this up and then we can land our cold open and take off on our adventure for the real episode. I don't know. Yes. We could stop Sean's pathetic attempts at pun-based, steering here. But I think I think, Andrew, we were talking a little bit before we hit record too, is I think we are both feeling, if I may speak for you, a growing frustration along the lines of the AI slop and and for me, it's not even so much the slop in terms of things that are just AI generated, even though we did an episode about that. We can that's not a new topic. But this idea too, that it's just this constant push that AI is taking over everything, but yet I feel a massive disconnect between what I'm hearing from the hype and the things that we're able to reproduce or create.
Right.
And you see these massive gaps. And I was literally like a crazy person yelling out loud, talking back to a podcast while I was riding my bike the other day because of an interview that this guy was on, who was I won't out him on our show, but it was a CEO from one of these AI companies, a smaller company, that was just talking about, AI is just going to replace intelligence units, and those are so much cheaper. And I'm like, the whole time I'm like, yes, but everything that they create is garbage. Like, with exception, it's almost all useless garbage. And I have examples here. And like I always say, I'm like, bring your receipts. And these people have angered me so much that we've got a podcast episode about.
Okay, so this is the bar that we're coming from. And I'll see whether I can push back against this a little bit, but we'll see where this goes.
All right, we'll take a quick pause and then we'll get into it. All right. Well, I'm Sean Leahy, joined by my almost fully healthy co-host.
Andrew Maynard. Yeah, you see, I'm even preempting you. I am so jacked up on these meds.
I know. We're ready. Well, that means, hey, this is the supercharged edition of Modem Futura, the show that explores the intersection of technology, society, and the possible, probable, and preferable futures, asking deep questions like, what will it mean to be human in the future? And I think, honestly, there is no better time to be asking that question than the time we are sitting in today, when it is almost inescapable to get away from the rhetoric, the hype, the Silicon Valley, the stock market pushes for AI, for everything from threats of it's taking your job to just give in, every AI will take over everything. And yet, I think have seen a growing pushback around, AI slop, the clankers. We've done episodes on that. And even just, going back, we released an episode it'll be 2 episodes ago now, around, again, that intentionality of human craft and care, and how that sort of is starting to become this shining beacon amongst all this AI slop. But I think what I kind of wanted to have us focus in a little bit today was talking about, and we've mentioned this before, going back to our episode with Punya, when we were talking about AI in education specifically, but this idea of when we have all this easy, unlimited generation of stuff, right? So think whatever a generative AI tool that might mean. So text, images, video, you name it now. When we have synthetic users, we have all of this stuff, seemingly endless production of stuff.
Yep.
There comes this issue of, and this is something that we've talked about before, and again, is this idea of the loss of friction and what that might represent.
Right. Everything just becomes so easy. Yep.
Yeah. In fact, I even queued up, I got a special treat for us that I'll play. I'll annoy everyone today with this.
That was easy.
Don't do that. I'm going to start coughing.
But
was that AI generated?
No, that was not AI generated. That came courtesy of YouTube and the fine people at Staples with their ad slogan, because of the easy button. And I think, that was one of these pieces that has sort of come up for me recently, is really thinking about the dangers. And we've talked on this show, it's not a new concept out there for other people, when we were looking critically at the role of these new generative AI tools and the concern about pushing things towards the middle, using things, losing some of that identity or that craft.
Right.
What, again, the artistic craft, the human craft, whether that be writing, whether that be image.
And it's funny, I've been feeling this more and more, and I feel a bit of a fraud here because, of course, with my Substack, almost every hero image that goes with a piece is generated using Midjourney. So I lean into AI there. AI and the Art of Being Human, the book that came out recently, we worked very closely with AI. So I do this, and yet I am feeling this deeply when I look at content from other people. Even content where I know that they know what they're talking about, but they're still leaning into AI to generate it. And it seems to homogenize everything. We seem to be factoring out the human element of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say the same. I mean, I use, and this is coming from a place of, I am maybe not the farthest, but pretty darn close, the farthest from an AI skeptic or something of that nature, right? I mean, both of us, we use generative AI tools constantly. I mean, there's AI tools happening in the background of this platform. But I think the thing that has driven me to a point of like just absolute frustration, separate from the friction, but it is that there seems to be this disconnect between the intentional use of AI and sort of this, that was easy, so let's just use it, right?
Yes.
And I think, we've talked before, and I don't want to necessarily rehash unless we need to, but this concept, so for people, if this is the first time you're listening to the show and you're not sure about this term we're throwing around called AI slop, that is just essentially, it's a pejorative term for just AI generated content.
Stuff.
Yeah, for stuff, right? That is being passed along. And then there's you'll hear it sometimes used as work slop, which is AI slop done in a work context, right? And we know, and I've felt this way, and a lot of people have reported too, that in organizations where they are using AI, for example, or even just your coworkers are using it, even if it's not part of like the organizational structure, when you're handed work that is dripping with AI slop, the amount of cognitive load it takes then to not only just accept what you've been given, but also comb through it, sort through it, whatever, to verify or validate it.
Yep.
And again, because we live in this age now where with these tools, you can create an avalanche of content and material to the point where it becomes almost a Sisyphean task to try to comb through it all, if that's to verify it.
And it gets back to this idea that it is now incredibly easy to generate content, but actually sort of extracting meaning from that content and using it is getting incredibly hard. So as an example of that, I've now heard this in several different contexts. Somebody in a collaboration, and one of their partners develops AI-based content, and superficially, it looks good, it reads well. But if you want to edit it, if you want to modify it, if you want to go back and take it in a different direction, you as a human have then got to rewind the clock and work out what the AI was trying to say and reconstruct it. And the lifting there is so much more than if you were actually working as two people together to generate this in the first place, because you have to go back and reconstruct.
Yeah, or even in that case, and again, we know with these AI tools, for example, even if you have the original prompt, you give it a couple times, you'll get different.
Yes.
So there is that which that's a feature, not a bug, right, of the way these tools are used. But also what that means, and especially if you do like image-based stuff, right? Because we've talked for ages about the frustration, right, which is part of the friction of the artistic friction, which I should describe that here in a second. But as we kind of move through that, right, that negotiation using Midjourney, for example, to create header images or whatever, that there is this back and forth trying to figure out, and you're like, and oftentimes what you ask for when you get it, there's a difference, because I feel like a lot of people get suckered into, wow, that's cool. I didn't know it could do that. That's pretty neat.
Right.
Different from that's what I was looking for.
That's exactly it. Yes. Yeah. And I'm sure so many people have found this. I mean, even if you're an expert Midjourney user, and you can do very sophisticated things with Midjourney and these other platforms, you get something which is almost there, not quite, and you just want to tweak something. So you say, can you tweak it? So it tweaks it. Then it changes everything else at the same time. And you go round and round and round, and you could never, ever get to that point where you've got just what you imagined that you needed or wanted.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at my Midjourney, like whatever they call it, your canvas, your history,
right?
Change the name. I mean, there'll be hundreds of images that look almost the same, because that's me going, nah, it's a little too this. And then it does it. Then it generates 4, and then from those you're like, no, I want this, and it's just this spiral that goes through.
Right. And you get further and further away from where you thought you were going to be.
Yeah, and things have gotten better, but even still, going back to the sort of even within like the last year. Right, this past year of getting images, and this will happen. So again, Modem Futura, the newsletter that I put out on LinkedIn, I always take a human image of Andrew and I in our production, and I give that to ChatGPT, and I ask it to create a fun illustration based on that image. And that's an AI slop element. It's just for decoration. It's not meant to be anything more than a fun illustration. And And even that one, it'll constantly put language or words, and I'm like, no words. And then it's like, you got it, Sean. Next image, all words.
Right.
No words whatsoever. And so it is one of those things that's incredibly frustrating. And I think that's where some of the danger starts to rise is while these tools, especially, I would say, from my perspective anyway, that the language elements, so the actual wordsmithing, is probably one of the easiest ones to actually work with and negotiate, because that's its bread and butter.
Right, that's right, yes.
But when it comes to images or videos, right, when you get something that is not at all what you wanted, you still end up going, well, okay.
And that's the easy slope, because superficially it looks good or it feels good. So the temptation is, let's just go with what it gave me rather than what I wanted. So now you've given up your creative agency to the machine. That's
it. And especially if what you're asking it to do is something you are not an expert in. Right. Like, I'm not an illustrator. I am terrible at it. Like, it would not be good if I did it. And so even the things that's giving me back is not what I wanted. It's still better than quote that I would be able to do on my own. So at some point you go, good enough. And that but then is the problem.
Yes. Yeah, but then you've got the other aspect of this, which is, I guess it's an aesthetic problem. I don't think it's a really big problem, but it still irritates me, and that is how uniform everything is. So I'll give you an example. For anybody that played with the upgrades to Notebook LM, Google's Notebook LM, with Nano Banana Pro. So Nano Banana Pro is their pro level, their next level image generation suite, which is good, really good. And most of the time you can even do text as well as the images. So in Notebook LM, Google sort of opened up this ability to create infographics using this generation engine. And they are good. They are really good.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that once you've seen about 10 of them, they all begin to feel the same. So I went literally within about 5 days of thinking, this is amazing, to please don't show me another one of these, because there's nothing of sort of the human behind it in it. It's the same sort of thing just being churned out. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because even before that update, I have this like gut reaction. So LinkedIn, right? Again, I'll get off my soapbox. I'll step on it just briefly to shout, stop putting AI expert in your title slogan. Suddenly everyone's an AI expert, you know? But what drives me nuts, and this has become a gut reaction to that slop, is when people share like, oh, check out this video of blah, 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 the text around it sounds organic or, whatever. But then the video is clearly the Notebook LM the video that they create,
the slide deck, yes,
it's a slide deck, and it's done of it, and they're cool, they're fun, they're informative, but like they have a tell to them because of the way it sort of brands the Notebook sort of image graphic behind them. The minute I see those, I don't even give it 1 second it is like an instant flag to tell me just to disconnect and disengage from it.
Well, I have the same reaction when I see these LinkedIn posts with text which is very clearly AI generated with the emojis. And the emojis are driving me around the bend. It's the little sort of check marks for the bullet points and the little sort of pointy hands and things. Because this is what a number of these platforms do. But what really upsets me is these are posts from people who know their stuff. So I know that they're not just lazily sort of passing stuff off to ChatGPT or whatever, but they are using something like ChatGPT to formulate their ideas and quickly put them into a post. And they all sound the same. There's the same cadence to each of these. There's the same visual look to each of them. And I get to the point now where I simply cannot read these, not because the content isn't necessarily worth reading, but because it just feels lazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like this is part of the stuff that's driving me a little bit like just around the bend with this stuff, is like, so what's the solution? I'll have my AI read it and then give me the summary. And I'm like, this is like the worst. Like, this is awful. And I want, so Andrew, I wanted to ask you if you knew about this word, because I've heard this word before, and I think it's one of those things where it sort of serendipitously kind of came back to me, and I'm like, this is it. And the word is satisficing. Do you know this term?
I have never heard of satisficing.
Okay.
That is a spliced word if there was ever a spliced word.
It is a I don't know if it would count as a portmanteau, but it's a combination essentially of satisfactory and sufficient.
Right.
So it's like this satisficing. And so the definition of it that I pulled here, I'll read it.
This is a real word, by the way. This is not something you made up. This is a real word.
This is a real. I mean, I don't know if I don't know how legitimate of a word, like if it's accepted in the Oxford English Dictionary, but it is a word.
It's going to be word of the year next year. You just watch.
It damn well might be. So satisficing is a decision-making strategy where a person chooses an option that is good enough to meet their needs rather than continuing to search for the absolute best or optimal solution. This approach, which combines the words satisfy and suffice, is often used when the cost or effort, keyword, of finding the perfect choice outweighs the potential benefits. It is a practical strategy that recognizes the limitations of information, time, and cognitive ability, a concept known as bounded rationality. And so that is like AI living there. Right, which is all these things.
Yep.
Right, which is again, it's that idea of what we're falling victim to. We're satisficing our content.
It's the good enough approach. Yes,
it's the good enough approach, and I feel like we've had at many different times we've talked about this in different ways, but like that is to me it signals this real danger because increasingly the content that I'm seeing coming across the transoms where I live out, where I hang out, right, are all like they just have those tells instantly. And again, what happens to me is I disengage from it. And like it's not even intentional. Like this is it's almost a physical reaction when I see these markers, is that I'm just like, ugh. I'm not even going to waste my time with that.
I am hungry for authenticity. I find this more and more. I want to see the real person. I want to engage with a human, with all those human flaws and idiosyncrasies and the weirdnesses and the things that are exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the other piece is, so I think the other side of this, right, is the creator side of when we are satisficing something, when we're creating things. And we had talked about this idea of friction before when we were talking about specifically, we had some episodes around AI and education, right? That the friction of learning is where the magic takes place. That friction, when you hit that part where it's difficult, which means you've reached that, if you imagine all of your knowledge or your, what you know is like a circle, right? The friction is when you first take that first bump outside of that circle, and now you don't know the answer to what the challenge before you.
Right.
That disconnect of having to learn something new is full of friction, right? You try something, it doesn't work. You have to but that friction, once you've now learned it, your circle grows. And then it continues to grow each time you go through this process. The removal of that friction means that your circle doesn't grow, right? Your circle of knowledge, your circle of experience, or it doesn't grow by as much.
Or it might sort of deceptively grow. So what I find interesting here is how much this comes back to our understanding of how we create meaning and value as humans. Because if you're just looking at this from a transactional perspective, you're just sort of saying impassionately, we want to increase knowledge and understanding. You can understand how you do that, say, working with AI. So you remove as much of the friction as possible so you can see that edge expanding. But there are two issues there. One is that is purely transactional in terms of putting more knowledge into the knowledge bucket. Secondly, there is little wisdom to that. So you're adding to knowledge, but you're not having that human interpretation of what it means and how you apply it. So the sort of lack of friction leads to lack of wisdom. But then when you get to the transactional bit, you have to ask the question, what is the worth of that knowledge? If it isn't something which helps sort of give us worth, give us value, gives us meaning, where exactly does this take us? And in some cases, you can argue maybe it takes us important places. If you end up with a new drug to treat a new disease, that's great. But beyond there, if it doesn't really do anything for who we are and how we actually find ourselves in this world, why are we doing it?
Yeah, it's I think that's a great point. I was trying to, while you're talking, I'm like quickly typing. I'm like, there's a great passage from Dr. Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park that I want to find it so I can get it right. But that's exactly it, is like the earned knowledge versus what is considered like a gift knowledge, right? Where like you can momentarily, again, through the use of these tools, right, you can springboard. And that's part of the power of these tools, is that if you have something where you need and again, I would say ultimately when all the chips are down, some of the best uses of it, if used intentionally, is to popcorn new ideas and help you make new connections. However, people are using it as a direct shortcut to, I don't have the knowledge or expertise in this thing. Give it to me. There it is. It sounds good. I'm not the expert. I don't know how to check if this is true or not. So therefore I'm just
going to put it out.
I'm just going to trust that it is, because it certainly has the confidence of an accurate statement. But that's borrowed knowledge. You didn't earn it. You didn't earn it the hard way. You didn't learn it yourself. So you're wielding something to which you don't understand the provenance of it. You don't understand the power of it. And that's why I want to look this quote up, because it talks about this from a genetic perspective.
And I can remember it from the film, but I'm not going to try and replicate.
I'll find the quote.
right.
But the idea though is that we're wielding these torches, if you will, without any understanding of how fire works. And the danger, of course, is that as we're doing this, we're devaluing or just burying that earned knowledge. We understand and have the respect of the knowledge and things that we've earned. And it's, again, none of this is a value judgment that says AI is bad. The bad part, and from my perspective, and you can blame Sean, you can send your letters to me. The bad part is when we satisfy ourselves to death, saying this is acceptable and we don't need the other part anymore.
Yes.
And I feel like that's the part that's so dangerous.
Just have that again. It's superficial knowledge, and knowledge is even the wrong word here, because it feels like it's sort of it's solid, but actually it doesn't have any of that understanding behind it. I mean, I guess one way of doing this actually is talking about knowledge without understanding. You're generating stuff, but you do not have the human, the expertise, understanding behind it in order to allow you to assess and utilize that. Now, to be very, very clear here, and this is, again, is from my perspective, if you look at these multiple AI tools and platforms, if you know what you're doing, if you learn how to utilize them, they can be unbelievably powerful. So I'm not sort of dismissing that at all. It's just that they are so good that you have to make a conscious decision to do that. Otherwise, you just sort of slip into this mode of generating stuff without understanding, without wisdom, and putting it out there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I think I found the quote.
Okay.
And I'm going to do something real quick. I'm checking it.
Gotta put the voice on.
Make sure it's the right quote as well. So yeah, okay. So sources say this is correct. All right. So here's the quote, and I love it because originally this is coming from, again, Michael Crichton's original, the book.
So this is the book, not the movie, but the
movie.
Piece was actually sort of replicated to some degree in the movie.
Yep. And well, I thought too.
Yes.
For what you can do in a PG-13 movie and all that, with all the constraints. But this is coming from the character Dr. Ian Malcolm, who is an open critic of the Jurassic Park world and all of the genetic stuff that has been going on the island. And he says, quote, "You know what's wrong with scientific power? It's a form of inherited wealth, attained without discipline. You read what others have done. You took the next step. You can do it very young. You can make progress very fast. There's no discipline lasting many decades. There's no mastery. Old scientists are ignored. There's no humility before nature, because you can stand on the shoulders of giants. You can accomplish something quickly. You don't even know exactly what you have done, but already you have reported it, patented it, and sold it, and the buyer will have even less discipline than you." So, and it goes on, and there's more, and I'll link it for people who are interested.
And it's a great quote, because it really captures this point where the lack of friction makes it so easy to put stuff out that it feels like it's solid, but it's done without that sort of that background of expertise, of toil, of learning, of understanding.
Yeah, and I need to start using that term, because I really like the phrasing of inherited.
Yes.
Right? That it was like you inherit wealth that you didn't earn necessarily, right? You inherit this information or this knowledge, right or incorrect, that you've inherited this output, and you're using it as if you have gained it. But you, again, coming back to that same idea, the reason this is problematic is because, as we've talked many times before, AI and AI tools are becoming so interwoven into the fabric of everything we do.
Yep.
It's no longer, we just surpassed OpenAI's 3-year anniversary, right?
Yes.
Of Chat GPT-3.
Yes. Yes.
And today, like I said, it is so difficult to find a modern digital workflow that is not heavily or at least in some way influenced, integrated, or in other ways intertangled with AI.
Right. So one of the interesting things here, though, is in professions where what you do matters, we're beginning to see a bit of a pullback from this, including in companies that are developing AI platforms with the coding. So the AI coding is a very interesting case here. And I was reading something on LinkedIn the other day, and I can't remember who posted this, but it was a really interesting post. It was somebody, a coder, who had decided to commit several weeks to writing the code for a new app, just using working with AI.
Just doing like vibe coding, like in that
effectively
in that way?
doing vibe coding. And they said this was great. They got a really solid app out of this. But then they came to the point where they needed to tweak it. They needed to edit it, debug it, and just extend it. And they couldn't because it wasn't their code, because they hadn't invested in the code. They did not understand line by line what it did. So the only way they could actually edit it is to go back to the drawing board. And in fact, actually would have been quicker to do it all from scratch rather than sort of deconstruct and interpret what the AI had written so that they could then change it. So again, and this is one of the reasons why so many companies are pulling back a little bit, because you have, again, that knowledge without understanding coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's a great example. And I feel like that is a story we keep hearing about the code, because again, that's one of the, I would say that's also one of the outputs that, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT, they do incredibly well.
Yep.
Right. Because there is enormous libraries on code. I mean, of how people have been able to develop human, like machine code.
Right. Yes.
And so, they're great. However, that's exactly it. They're borrowing from all this stuff, just like if you had copied code from somebody else, not having a clue what they wrote, and dropping it in and going, it works.
And of course, the crazy thing is here, different use cases are important. So I will use something like Claude for coding if I'm doing something superficial. So I created a web page the other day, which I was so proud of. And it was a stupid little thing where I needed to create a calendar invite without putting people's names on. So I created a little app where you put in all the details and it would create a calendar invite that you could send out to people. You can already get things that do this, but I was so proud that I just asked it to do this, and it did it. So great application. It served my purposes perfectly. But if I wanted to go in and tweak that code, I couldn't, because the amount of time it would take me to deconstruct and understand what I think Claude did, and then to go back in and edit it, would just not be worth my time. Now, it doesn't matter just with a calendar invite, but if you're doing something which is critical to the mission and the products of a company, say, or an organization, that is a really big issue.
It's huge. And I think, and again, we're seeing this disconnect, which is like, I think there's, this sort of term that has kind of cropped up in different places, just with this oops AI. Right. It's like, what happened? Oops, we went all AI, and now it's this exact, like, again, you see these early promises of AI is so amazing at writing code. All right, we'll get rid of all of our developers and we'll just use the AI. And then we're like, and now, we need to change that color from green to blue. How do we do that?
Of course, you realize, so this is going to last about 5 years, and then we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it when we realize that the only way we can understand all this AI written code is to create the next generation of AI that understands it. So this is the beginning of the end, where we need AI to sort of interpret the AI world that we've created.
Yeah, no, it's pretty wild. And I think, and I think we're going to see a lot of this, because I've talked about this before on our show, but it's worth mentioning again. I mean, I feel the same way when it comes to just written content. So it is, so what is, an interesting use case like I often do is I'll get an idea. I'll be driving somewhere and I'm like, what if I were to look at this and whatever. And, you throw those ideas into, I use the pro version, the souped up version of ChatGPT, put it in there and I'll ask it for these deep, I use like the deep thinking mechanisms and all this stuff. And what you get is this really, again, at first glance, a very impressive tome that has, it feels like an academic paper. It has all the hallmarks. It has the cadence of it. But then when you're going through it, you're like, okay, this is good. This is not, this is good. This is not. But again, for myself, as someone where that information, when that crosses the transom and it has my name on it, right? What I can't stand, what I can't abide is having any insecurity that I don't recognize every sentence in that document.
Yep.
Right? Because if someone were to say, hey, I disagree with what you said on page 12, paragraph 3, and I'm like, huh?
You can't defend yourself.
And then you read it and you're like, when did I say that?
Right.
Like, oh, that's not what I really was meaning.
Then you just get back and say, that was the AI.
Sorry, mate, not my problem. But that's what drives me nuts. And so in the end, I get so worried about that that I end up, whatever I get, right? And again, this is that avalanche that comes. It's 30 pages of text. I have to pull it apart every sentence so that I check every sentence and either agree, disagree, or modify. And then by the time I'm done, I've done twice the amount of work than if I would just have written it myself and just ask for some light touch editing.
Right. Yes.
So it's really frustrating, I think.
But again, it comes back to this point that it is so easy. And if you look at sort of how our brains are wired, they're wired to take the easy path. I'm not sure that you would sort of call this an addiction because there are formal definitions of addiction, but it is addictive. If you look at sort of energy minimization, and our brain is trying to do this, it feels like it is an energy minimization route going the AI route rather than doing the seemingly heavy lifting yourself. But there is a huge cost to that. Yeah.
Well, that's a really interesting point too, because I think that was something I had thought about a while ago. I think when we were kind of talking about something to this extent similar is, our brains and the way that our physical bodies and minds and brains have learned to evolve over survival, right? Is exactly that. It's about efficiencies and, categorization and, saving those resources where we need and spending, because again, if you're thinking about every calorie spent could be your last, right? Like you have to, your body's trying to preserve yourself as much as possible. This is the reason why your limbs go before your core goes, right?
So we're heading towards AI slop as a survival mechanism. It is a biological imperative to lean into AI
slop away, man. Just slop. Just slop away. But it's wild when you think about it because you're like, our brains are wired in a way to grab onto that efficiency. Go, we can save ourselves a lot of trouble, and because friction doesn't feel good, right? Friction, when you first feel it, you're like, ooh. The easy path is nicer. The easy path expends less energy. It expends less calories, which from a survival perspective, a physiological survival perspective is better, right? And so that I feel like there's an interesting thing that we should explore more, maybe at another time. But this connection between the way the different speeds at which our brains have essentially been developed over, I was gonna say millennia, but long time, and the development of these technologies and intersection where it's like they're running at different speeds.
So of course, this is exactly the debate about use of social media and abuse of it, and how there is this sort of growing body of research and evidence saying in certain situations we really need to pull back from this because it sort of keys in to our sort of cognitive biases and the way our sort of brain works. So it's very, very hard to resist. And I'm surprised we haven't seen more of this discussion around AI because AI is like social media on steroids. If we thought that sort of social media sort of sucked us in, AI does more. Now, there's one subtle difference here. And that is if you look at social media platforms, they've been engineered to suck us in. Very intentionally. And that's part of the scandal here. Whereas AI, I think, is a little bit more complex. Although if you've been following anything around OpenAI and ChatGPT, there are a lot of concerns that GPT-4 was designed to do the same thing, to suck you in. I think now companies are pulling back from there. Nevertheless, these platforms are designed to be so easy, so frictionless, so seductive that it takes a monumental effort to resist the temptation just to follow that route. And there you have a very similar situation to what we face with social media.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think what's interesting is at present, we're already seeing around the world nations taking a stance on social media and banning it for I think it was in New Zealand, and I know Australia has some law. I mean, the UK, even in the US, that's being considered, right, of banning social media for, that raises a whole other issue because it's not about whether kids under a certain age should not be allowed. It's like, how are you going to tell, which is a privacy concern for everybody. Different show, different topic there. but I think that's a piece of it too. The cynic in me would suggest too that I think we're not seeing so much of that concern. One, if you look at social media, that is a platform that has now existed for nearly 20 years.
Yep.
And it's taken that long for people to kind of get all the way around behind it, to finally start clamping down and saying, we have evidence now that this can be dangerous or damaging, especially to certain groups at certain ages and all this kind of stuff. So it does always take time, but also the cynic in me would also say there is so much money in the AI game right now that it's sort of like, yep, we should do what's right for everybody, but but everyone kind of keep your head down until the cash stops flowing.
Yeah, and so this deeply complicates things because this is definitely different to social media. If you look at the stakes at play with AI, just look at the United States. I mean, by the time this airs, this will be a couple of weeks ago, where the US announced, what is it, the Gemini project, the Gemini mission? I think it's the Gemini mission they called it, but this is the US government's mission to sort of do a Manhattan project or a Manhattan scale project around artificial intelligence and research. They are pouring everything into not only creating the next generation of AI platforms, but working out how to use those to accelerate research and discovery. So as soon as you've got federal governments working hand in glove with private companies to put AI front and center of the national strategy, it is incredibly hard to have conversations around where we need to pull away from its use.
Yep, absolutely. I just checked it. Yeah, Genesis. Genesis.
Okay, that was the meds coming. Gemini, I have no idea where Gemini came. Thank you. Yes.
Also, Gemini 3 just had a major update, which is incredible too. So
I'm so glad you fact checked that. Yes, the Genesis.
All in there together. See, that's the advantage of a virtual studio. I can just like type away.
Right.
But and to make things more, again, not to get into political weeds here too, but the other piece that makes that more difficult is when you look at senior government officials holding many personal financial stakes in these exact technological companies doing these exact things. There's massive conflicts of interest. There's all these kind of concerns. And I think that really complicates the situation even more. But sort of coming back, I want to, I've got something written down here that I want to make sure I do this episode justice to sort of make a claim for why we need to claw back that friction. And again, this comes from a position of not ascribing value, right? AI is not good. It is not bad. It is just a thing that you can use. And so when you are using it, I think the question is, navigating that boundary, which is a moving one, between intentionally preserving friction where it makes sense and then using these tools also where it makes sense if you need to spring forward to fill in a gap or something like that. And the reason I bring this up is this definition, this loose definition of creative friction. So specifically thinking about the friction when it comes to creating something new or novel or innovative or interesting. So this could be images, this could be text, whatever you might think of, but a loose definition of this, right? And if people are interested, please go search. There is a long history of understanding how you might define creative friction. But essentially, it's the understanding that friction plays a vital role in creativity itself, right? It acts as a catalyst for innovation, for challenging our assumptions, adding depth and meaning to the thing that we're trying to create. Rather than being an obstacle to be avoided entirely, the right amount of friction pushes individuals and even teams, if this is organizational, to find more inventive solutions. It's sort of the antidote to that satisficing.
Yes.
Right? It pushes you beyond just going, it's okay, it's good enough, and really challenges you to that through that friction. And I think I've heard people talk about this before, right? It's like taking a rough stone and adding the sand and that friction to it. On the output is a gem that pops out, right? A smooth
it polishes. So many analogies that have been used through the ages about sort of honing and friction to sort of create that final product. Yes.
And so I wrote down 4 elements that stood out to me as like, I want to make sure I note these because these are the gains of that creative friction, which you can also read as these are the things that we lose by eliminating that friction. One, it deepens thinking, right? So if the task becomes too easy, you disengage from it. You go, if I do this,
that was easy.
You stop paying attention.
You just had to get the button in again.
I got to get my mileage out of that. But that deepening your thinking, it keeps you alert, keeps you focused. It provides ways of thinking about things deeply.
Yep.
It also prevents groupthink, right? And groupthink, I mean, you can say that is AI in the sense.
Right.
That
So AI has become our hive mind, which is why everything looks the same.
It
feels the same. Yes.
And by preventing that groupthink, we get, by intentionally, and this is something we talk about all the time in our work, and we're right. When you intentionally increase the diversity of perspectives, you get better stuff. You get you get new ways of thinking about combating that groupthink. So it's not just more of the same.
Yep.
And again, if you think about as an individual, that might be good. Even organizationally, right? How are you going to come up with that next new thing, that service, that product? It's not going to be just copying this, staying in the middle, right? It's finding that bet. It's finding that outlier that becomes the lightning rod that that's not going to come from groupthink, right? When everyone just says yes.
Yep. You regress to the mean rather than sort of working at the edges. Yep.
That's right. It provides that, again, that creative friction provides focus and structure. So those so I used to talk about this all the time in educational context, even when I teach photography, right? Adding constraints, intentionally adding points of friction, like you can't do this, you can't use that, you must do this, right? That those constraints allow to the individuals or groups, right, to narrow their focus and focus on what they're trying to do.
Right.
And by eliminating so many of the unlimited possibilities, it focuses you, and it creates this weird, almost like paradoxical, it creates more freedom by constraining you. You actually have more freedom in many ways, which is a weird kind of concept, but it's cool.
So it effectively, it opens creative doors. It forces you to open those doors. Yes.
That's right.
Yep.
And the last piece there is, enhancing the meaning and satisfaction.
Right. Yes.
So overcoming. So when you are, again, whether you're thinking about it from an artistic perspective of creativity in that way, if you want to think about it in terms of knowledge generation, just, personal journey kind of a situation, when you have those points of friction and you overcome them, you overcome those challenges and you put in the effort needed to reach that new finished product or that new goal or whatever, that becomes a much more meaningful experience. And this, again, go back in time, a human history. There's so many lessons about earning it versus being given it. Right. Again, it's not, you don't want to inherit that gift. You want to earn that gift.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Things that are worth getting are worth working for.
And I think and I think a lot of this comes back to what Jeff and I talk about in AI and the Art of Being Human around care. There's a process of putting care into things, thinking about care as not this woolly idea, but as something that is core to who we are as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's what we talked about the whole episode about the Apple logo, right?
Yes.
And then, which, by the way, for our fans, I will be following that up with if people have you seen their Christmas video?
No.
Okay. So I'll be following it up with a second one about that because it's a treat. Again, all care.
Yes.
But that's exactly it. And I think what we're seeing now too with this rise of a lot of pushback and things is we're feeling, again, with the AI slop, with the clankers, with all that kind of stuff, with even just my own recognition of how I react to content that people are putting out, is what you're missing is that care. And when you smell that someone has taken a shortcut to that, even if it's on target,
right?
Like, that smell is enough to go, nah.
So there is a really interesting aspect of this, which I think complicates things. And that is asking, where is that level of care and creative friction important versus where is the fast and efficient route important? And I don't think there's an easy answer, but certainly I can imagine somebody saying, well, if you are a creative and you're creating something, sure, you need to have your humanity, your sort of effort and understanding put into that. If you're just writing an email, why bother? And I think there's pushback against that. And I would certainly push back and say that actually the human approach to this is to think about care in everything you do, from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. But I do also think there's an argument around efficiency. And then the question is, how do you find that balance between efficiency and sort of pushing back creatively against that temptation to take the easy route?
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting that when you were mentioning that, the thought that instantly kind of sprung to life in my mind was, That's also the difference. If you think about, I mean, even today, or rewind the clock 10, 15 years, whatever, is the difference of when you would just send someone an email versus when you would write them a letter.
Yes.
And I think, I mean, there's a part of it for me, I know, like when I think about these tools, like again, putting an email, are you sending just a matter of fact email, or are you trying to send a message to somebody, that is intentionally demonstrating the care, right? Someone has reached out to you, say, I have an issue. I've had this problem. I'm looking for guidance. I'm looking for help. I'm looking for whatever it might be.
Yep.
And if you say, oh, well, let me put this in ChatGPT, when they get that back, they go, oh,
they know you're signaling that you don't care, that you're offloading that responsibility and care to a machine rather than actually leaning into it.
Absolutely. Versus something that you know to be, or at least have the perception of it. I mean, you might never know exactly, because you could say, make this sloppy and full of errors. And again, and I say this too, knowing that there are people out there that are like, but Sean, what if you're English or you're trying to communicate in something that's not your language? I understand, but you can still write the thing and just have it translate.
That's right. Yes.
But I think,
I think it's signaling the effort and the intent behind it. So in my experience, people are very forgiving, and that they understand your limitations and understand where you need to use tools, but they also want to see the effort and the care that goes into something.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think, that's the difference of, again, even just and I'll make this analogy, right? It's the difference of a handwritten note that says like, thank you, and something like that versus, getting a printed piece of paper with something that just says thank you. You're like, right. Okay.
Or in the age of AI, 3 pages that expound on exactly what that thank you means.
Dearest Sean, I shall forthwith present to you this tome of thanks.
But I was thinking as you were saying that, so I remember sort of when people sort of started using sort of shorthand in text messages, and we all thought that the world had sort of fallen apart because rather than this care of having a carefully crafted message, you just got an LOL emoji or whatever. Yeah. But now it feels that is the human care side, because a short sort of LOL sort of smiley face or whatever has got more humanity behind it than a page of AI slop.
I know, it's wild, isn't it? And I will say, I am that guy. I will say it. I am that one. I use punctuation in my text messages.
Right.
Always have.
Yeah, well, that ages you.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I'm like, yeah, badly in some cases. No, it's absolutely wild. And so, all right, so let me ask you this. I'm going to throw this out. One last thing, I think, because I'm looking at the time too, and I want to keep you. I don't want to keep you longer than your meds wear off. All right, so I'm pulling from a Futures Improv prompt here.
Okay.
All right, so let's imagine a scenario. I'm trying to think. I don't see the difference is on our virtual studio. I don't have the jingle queued up.
Oh no.
So you'll have to maybe I'll either put it in post, or you just have to imagine Futures Improv, where we take AI Slop, intentional, who creates these wild scenarios, and then we kind of riff off of them. But here's a scenario with friction and the loss of it, entitled "The Split Screen Society." All right, so imagine a world where we have a 2-class system of one are button press operators using generative AI tools. Another are friction elites who have the time and resources to develop craft with highly customized AI partners. So the idea here is, what are the justice implications, and how do we democratize meaningful struggle and not just toil?
Goodness me.
But yeah,
so okay, this is gonna. This feels like sort of the whatever AI platform you use was getting sort of caught up in an intellectual esoteric loop with this.
Yep.
Yeah,
100%.
But here's the interesting thing. Because I think about this and write about it a lot, because I'm really interested in what it is that makes us human, sort of what brings meaning to what we do and brings value to what we do. And a lot of it is about sort of that care and that value which other people see. And this is where my cold is going to come out. Excuse me a second. So coughing away, and I realize because we're using the online sort of platform, I don't know where the mute button is. So
it's okay. That's the magic. This is our listeners won't even hear it.
Okay, right. Well, we'll see, because it might all add to it. But so just this last week, I wrote this short story about a futuristic department of intellectual craft, where I explore this idea of a bunch of academics who've decided that the true value lies in totally divorcing themselves from AI and focusing on what humans alone can actually generate, and really is esoteric and elite, because they have the privilege to be able to sort of shut themselves off in their ivory tower and think these sort of grandiose thoughts, whereas sort of in the real world you have to sort of follow the flow of what actually gets you to where you need to be. So this idea, this split screen idea of sort of two different sort of levels of society or whatever, I think it's an intriguing one. I'm not quite sure where it'll go, but I think you're going to find a lot more debates over the next year or so about sort of where we need to bring friction into our lives so we can actually demonstrate who we are as people rather than take the frictionless AI approach.
Yeah. These are always kind of fun because when the AI comes up with them, you're, again, perfect example. These things come up with these ideas and you're like, oh, come on. Like, I would have written a better question that, but I do think, I think we're already, in some ways, we're already there. That we're seeing, the sort of, again, this massive push to the middle. We're seeing a lot of consolidation, a lot of efforts to consolidate information, power, and wealth around these AI tools that just trust the AI, just don't worry. The whole push here on, and I would say this is also a caution, right? Is that while one hand from the AI companies are distracting us, saying, look at this new cool tool. And again, these are very incremental upgrades and changes. We're nowhere closer to the ever snake-oiled promise of AGI and superintelligence than we ever have been.
Yeah.
Yet they are really interesting, fascinating, amazing technological feats that these tools can do.
Yep.
On the other hand, while we're being distracted, is reaching for the throat. And in this metaphor, that throat is reaching to the government, asking like, hey, we're looking at $1 trillion, like looking at OpenAI, suggesting that it'll take $1 trillion of investment to get where they want to go. And they're trying. So we need to secure government bailout because there's no way when you have no revenue, you can cover your losses.
Right.
When you have it. So it's like, and that would be the caution here, I think, with a split environment too, is like making sure that as these affordances are sort of paraded in front of like, look what it can do, look all this stuff, is being not necessarily skeptical of the technology, but skeptical of the motivations of having people surrender their friction in lieu of this shiny technological tool, while the whole background here is basically a money and power grab.
Yeah.
Like, that is a major point of concern for me.
So, and I think that is the critical question here. To what degree will people either surrender their friction or willingly sort of have it taken away from them with the promise of AI? So I do want to end on a potentially positive note, because I have this suspicion that, again, going back to our biological imperative and sort of who we are as a species and how we behave, I think that we're going to see a backlash against this frictionless AI society. I think people are going to realize sooner rather than later that this isn't what they want. This isn't what brings meaning to their life. It isn't what brings joy to their life. And I think you're going to sort of have people beginning to turn away from stuff that seems easy. Now, I may be wrong there. And there's also the very real danger of, if we have 6, 12, 24 months of people accepting the frictionless society before they start fighting back, maybe it's too late then. But I do think that most people will begin to feel as if they want more in their life rather than the easy route.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's a great way for us to kind of wrap up and end, because I do think that's the thing. And I would suggest when people are either consuming content that they know to be, AI generated, or creating it themselves, is to ask that question of like, is this the right addition or subtraction of that friction? For you, because again, it comes down to that personal element as well. As I like what you had said, Andrew, is, does this content bring me joy?
Yes.
Because I know from myself, a lot of times that the joy is short-lived in seeing what these tools can do, but the joy is not being fed this output as output.
Yep.
I want to see that output then being used as, in some, I've heard it used this way too, like AI should be the paint, not the painter. Right. In that way. Like, it's fine to use these tools, but they should still be wielded with that care and craft so that you can tell that there was effort put into this. Because otherwise, I mean, we've had, this goes all the way back. I think one of our first episodes we talked about, it was a Mid-Journey conversation talking about what when you, for example, if you purchase a painting or a photograph from an artist, the actual material thing that you're purchasing is very minimal. You're purchasing some paper, some ink, and some glass and wood.
Everything behind it.
It's what you're buying is that artist's intent, their expertise, and all of that, that mountain that sits beneath the surface that got to that point to create that element that you find desirable to have in your home or office or wherever.
I think is exactly where we need to be. And actually, just to wrap up, I'm going to throw in a video sort of association, which I think is really worthwhile here. And it's an old one. And it's Disney's version of The Sorcerer's Apprentice. If you remember the story about the Mickey Mouse apprentice who took the easy route to clearing up in the wizard sort of...
And the Fantasia,
sort of
like what could go wrong with
what could possibly go wrong?
Mouse?
And so I would encourage everybody to go back and watch that because it is so pertinent to this discussion about the easy button.
That is a great way to end, because that is, talk about inherited power. Right?
Yes.
By good old Mickey. Oh, fantastic. Well,
that was easy.
I had to get it in one last time. Well, this is absolutely amazing. I'm glad, Andrew. Thank you for joining while not feeling 100% and jumping into the virtual studio with me a day before you head out on a big, awesome trip.
Yes, I'm off to Berlin to give a keynote at a big education conference. So that'll be fun.
And we'll catch up when you're back. We'll catch up because I'm curious to hear all about that and how that goes. And again, for all of our new and existing loyal Modem Futura fans, please help us spread the word by liking, subscribing, or following our show, depending on what your podcast player allows, and also leaving us a rating and review, because as much as we criticize that AI slop, we need those machines to know about us in order to get us in front of new eyes and ears. So any help there would be greatly appreciated. And so, from myself and from Andrew, thank you all very much. And we'll see you on the next episode of Modem Futura.
We'll see you there.
End transmission.